Hello everyone, and welcome to our training course on Mastering System Manager. My name is Vincent Bova, Content Manager at AVPro. In this course, I'm going to explain what System Manager is and how it adds real intelligence, not only to your programming, but the overall user experience. System Manager lives inside the processor, and we all know the processor is a brain. Well, if the processor is the brain, System Manager functions like the nervous system. It coordinates signals, it tracks states, and ensures the system responds intelligently. But System Manager has lots of other advantages as well, and some of those advantages are going to shine immediately. In my project here, I've created a hypothetical project, and this project has video and audio distribution. This is where System Manager is really going to shine when you're sharing some sources across different areas in a project, whether you're doing a residential install or even a commercial install, depending on what that is. But when you're sharing sources, let's talk about some of the common problems that could crop up when that happens. Well, sometimes when you're sharing sources, you'll have collisions with other rooms. Maybe you'll turn something off on somebody else, or maybe you'll turn something on somebody else. So with System Manager, you can really program efficiently and avoid these types of collisions. Now, when you create a project, and in this project, all I did was partially created this. I've added some building blocks to my system. I've added a main processor. I've added the rooms to our project. I've added a couple of virtual panels. We all know those as special controllers that can be executed on a Windows-based laptop or PC and have a control experience just like a touchscreen, right? So I've created two of these and with two different styles. One of the advantages of System Manager, and you're going to notice this right off the bat, as soon as you add your building blocks to your workspace, which is the first step in building a project file, right away you're going to notice that your interfaces have structure. They have a navigation structure, okay? So I'm going to show you some of this navigation structure. First of all, we have different menus. We have a button on here on the bottom right that's going to pop up a list of your rooms. It's going to give you a menu already included. You don't have to program any of that navigation. It's going to be included in your Coral or Elegance templates. And when you select a room, it'll pop up a list of sources. And we have a source list here. Okay? So one of the advantages of System Manager right off the bat is that it's going to build that navigation for you automatically. There's even going to be a way to select a power button and pop up a list of all your power options. The ability to turn off the current room that you're in right now, or turn all rooms off, or change your mind. So let's summarize. One of the advantages of System Manager is that built-in navigation that's automatically going to be built for you if you're using our stock templates. Now, also, one of the great things about System Manager is when you add a controller to your workspace, let's go to the controller tab. Let's pretend we're adding a controller to a room. You get to pick a template. We have 3 different templates. But you also get to pick whether you're using list menus or button menus. And you get to attach different options to those menus. But let's focus on what list and button menus are. And this is a core function of System Manager. List menus will create a list-based menu for your rooms and your sources. So that's going to be a text-based list. Button menus are going to give you a little more freedom to control what those menus look like. And those are going to allow you to create your own buttons, your own text, your own icons. And I'm going to illustrate these by showing you by launching our virtual panels. Let's start with our list menu. If I pull up our list menu, you can see our sources are already exposed. I could access the sources by toggling this source list here. But the first thing you want to do in any install is select a room. So if I select the room button, you can see that this list has already been generated with all of the rooms in our project. We can control what rooms are added, but out of the box, this text-based list is going to be automatically generated for you. Okay? So think of list menus like hitting the easy button. We created a controller with a list menu. Any rooms that have been added to the workspace are automatically going to be populated here. And when I select a room, it's going to pop up a list of sources that are included in that room, if they apply to that room. No work required. Of course, you could tailor this list. You can control how these are named. Right now, they're named very generically. There's no watch this or listen to that or control that. These are just named as they are in the workspace, right? You can see we have weather, cable, Roku, Kaleidoscope. We have a few music players. We have a few automation like climate and security, even our projector. We might not want that in this list. We can control what gets in here, but the list itself is automatically generated. We hit the easy button. Now, what if you want to control what this looks like? Because not everybody wants text-based source and room lists, right? We also have a power menu, and this is going to look the same whether you're using list and button menus. And this is going to allow you to turn off the current room or turn all rooms off, right? Or cancel, okay? So that's automatically going to be generated for both list and button menus. Let's launch our button menu now and see what the contrast is. I'm going to select rooms, and now you're going to see what a button menu looks like. This is going to give you a little more freedom in design. It's going to allow you to create your own icons. I dragged and dropped these on the installation, and I programmed whatever text I wanted. I could call the media room theater room, Joe's media room, or anything else I want. But I can control what this button looks like. If I don't like the button, I could throw it away and create my own button, right? So this gives you a little more custom capability. And when I select one of these, I have to program what it does, and it's going to pop up the list of sources in the form of button menus available in that room. So button menus are not going to be that text-based list that's automatically generated. It's going to be something that's going to rely on you, the RTI programmer, to build and customize. Besides the navigation that's built in, you're going to be able to use list menus in your install and not have to program a thing, because these buttons also have to be told what to do, okay? And we're going to talk about that next. One of the great advantages of System Manager is the ability to run those activity commands, or macros as we call them. Macros are just routines or instructions that run on the processor. But these activities, like watch or listen or control, are going to run in a centralized location. In the old days, if we had 5 different controllers, we program those activities on each controller. And that could be a little time consuming and a little monotonous, right? So now what we can do is centralize our activities for each room in one place. And no matter how many controllers are controlling that room, well, they'll run in a central location instead of having their own activities. And this is going to avoid problems. It's going to have advantages, which I'm going to highlight. But how do you centralize these activities? Well, let's talk a little bit more about our system first. In our system, we have 2 virtual panels that are placed in the global area. That implies that these panels can control more than one room. They have the ability to be a multi-room controller. And in this case, we have 4 different rooms: a media room, family room, office, and main bedroom. So these virtual panels we created, one with a list menu and one with a button menu, have the ability to control those 4 rooms, okay? So we didn't create any local controllers in any of the local rooms. So these virtual panels need to know what to do with each room, okay? So let's start with the media room. I'm going to click on the media room, and then I'm going to click in the room configuration. I'm going to click on activities. Now you're going to see a list. It's almost like a spreadsheet of all the activities available for the media room. Some of these activities might be shared. Some of them might be local to the media room only and not used in other rooms. Since many of our sources are part of a video distribution, you can see here we have an AVPro matrix driver, which controls all 4 sources in all 4 rooms. And we also have an RTI distribution matrix, which controls the 3 Sonos players in all of the rooms also. Let's define activity. An activity is a set of instruction or one instruction that's going to run for the purpose of jumping to that device and controlling it. So sometimes that activity can configure things along the way. For example, when you run in a cable activity, it might have to turn on a projector or an AVR or both. It might have to switch inputs along the way. And on its final destination, it will actually jump to that device control page. So that would be an activity. But in the same way, we have other activities as well. These activities are just going to jump to a specific source device and not configure anything along the way. An example of that, going to a thermostat page, going to a lighting page, or a weather page. We don't want to configure anything along the way. We just want to quickly jump to that page, maybe shades or anything else, security, and just be able to adjust whatever functions we want and then get back to what we're really doing. Now, System Manager knows the difference between those types of activities. In fact, it knows the difference between a video activity, an audio activity, and those other activities that you just jumped to. In addition, it knows all these different data points in that nervous system. It knows if a room is on or if a room is off. It knows if video in a room is on or off, or if audio in that room is on or off, or even happening. It knows if a source has been selected or if it's in use, and a lot of other data points. This is the activity configuration screen. And our job is to configure these activities for System Manager. Now there's different columns, and I'm going to explain each one. Let me open these up a little bit, make some space here. The first column, labeled Enable. This is where we determine which of these devices are actual activities and which of them are not. Sometimes you have a source device that isn't an activity. An example for that might be a projector or a TV, or a device that you just need the commands for. Maybe you're just turning it on and switching inputs, but you don't need a physical activity for it, like a watch, listen, or control. So our job is to go through this list and check off whatever is an activity, right? And uncheck whatever's not an activity. Now, you might notice there's a lot of check marks already. System Manager is going to guess at what should be an activity, but our job is to double check that process. And I'm going to go through this list and tailor this to what activities I need in the media room in this case. Okay? Let's start with weather, which is the first in this list. Is weather an activity? Well, it's certainly checked, but do we need this as an activity in our list menu or button menu? If the answer is yes, if you want to give your client the ability to jump to this weather page that is included with every single project so the client can get some quick weather statistics, whether at home or another location, because you could change these, that's going to be an activity. So you'd want to leave that checked. Okay? What about cable? Cable is definitely an activity, and that's a different type of activity than the weather. The weather you're just going to jump to, but with the cable activity, you're going to do a couple of things. You're going to jump to that activity page, but you're also going to configure things along the way. You're going to turn on the projector in this room, the AVR, you're going to switch inputs, and then jump finally to the device itself. So that's going to be a more involved activity, but an activity nonetheless. Same thing with Roku, same thing with Kaleidoscape and Blu-ray. And of course, all 3 of our Sonos players. Anything that has an interface that we created for the purpose of performing a watch, listen, or control activity, or even view, that's going to be an activity. What about our projector? Now, our projector, we might want to create an activity for a projector or not, okay? It depends on our client's needs. Now, in many situations, you might not create pages for a projector because you don't intend to give your client an activity for it. In this installation, I didn't create any pages for my projector. If I click on my projector source in the workspace, there's no underlying pages. I could add some if I change my mind using any of these options, but I don't have any pages. I never intended to give my client an activity. Why would I not give my client an activity? Well, the projector itself doesn't have a watch or listen activity, right? And maybe you can give your client some settings, right? That would be the only reason why you would give your client an activity for the projector. But I don't want to give my client those settings. My client's not technically savvy, and giving him projector settings could open up some problems. He might accidentally hit the keystone and warp the screen projection. Or he might trigger a setting that triggers a service call. So I'm going to untick that as an activity. What about climate and security? Those are certainly not watch or listen type of activities, but if you want to jump to your climate page, let's view our climate. There's pages here on both controllers, so we probably want to create an activity for that. So I'm going to leave that checked so the client can change this set point and view what the temperature is in the home or business. What about security? Same drill. If you want to have the client jump to that security page and either view some statuses or trigger a status, well, you need an activity for that. So we're going to leave that checked. So far, System Manager is doing an okay job at guessing which ones are activities. We had to untick the projector, but nonetheless, it's still doing a pretty good job. What about the matrix switch, our Zone 1 matrix? We only added that component so we have the proper commands available in that room. So I'm going to untick that. Same thing goes for the RTI DSP. That was just created in the workspace for the purpose of discovering or configuring our RTI DSP matrix. And in this system, we have an 8046-100, which doesn't require a physical activity. Of course, the Sonos players connected to it does, but not the DSP. So let's untick that. Okay? Now, what about the items that were not checked? What about the home pages? You might notice there's two different home pages here. There's one here and one here. Let's explain that. The project file, when you add a room, will automatically create a source called home. And then when you add the controller to the global area or to the individual rooms, it'll give you the option to create a page on that source. In this case, we have two multi-room controllers in global, so it created a page in the global area. But if we add a controller to a local room, that has its own home page. And that's where those controllers will jump to in the media room, or the family room, or the office, or the main bedroom, right? So there's potentially in this project 5 different home sources. But in the media room, you could give the ability to jump to any global or multi-room controllers to jump to those home pages, aka our virtual panels, or any local controllers in the media room. Since we don't have any local controllers in the media room, I'm just going to select the global homepage because I want to give my global controllers, the 2 virtual panels, the ability to jump to a homepage. Okay? What about Zone 1 here on the media room? That's not going to be for the audio distribution. That was just added to our workspace to punch through volume, to program the commands and to have that structure. That's not an activity either. What about our AVR? Well, it could be an activity. I might give my client access to some DSP settings or the ability to control the AVR. But again, I don't want to trigger any service call. My client's not technically savvy, and giving him an AVR function may or may not trigger a service call. I don't want to take that chance. So I'm going to untick that because I didn't create pages when I added my AVR to the media room anyway. See how there's no pages here? Okay. So there's probably not going to be an activity. Okay. So I'm going to leave that unticked. What about please wait? I'm jumping to that. Do I need a page for that? Well, even though we're jumping to the please wait page, it's a temporary stop on our activity macro. We're going to jump to it, but it's only temporary while we switch inputs, turn on devices, and finally jump to the final destination. So even though we need to jump to it, it's not an activity. It's not a watch. We don't want to give our client a please wait activity. Okay? Now, we also created a system status activity. That's a page set. Okay? And that's going to be a activity. If I click on that system status, you can see I created one page for one controller, the button menu controller, and this is going to be a status screen for my client. So my client can jump to it, see what rooms are playing what, see what's selected in that room, what if the room is on, if video is on, and audio is on. Okay? So I'm not going to, I need this for an activity, obviously, because how else am I going to get to it? So that will be an activity as well. So I'll leave that checked. So that's it for my activities. So everything checked is going to be an activity. And if you check these, they will show up in the list menu. Anything unchecked will not show up. However, if you're using button menus, it's not possible to run those from centralized locations unless they're enabled. So it's going to need to be done for both list and button menus. Let's move on to the next column. Now, like I said before, System Manager knows the difference between a Sonos player and a cable box. It knows the Sonos player is an audio type of source, and it knows that the cable box is a video type of source. It also knows the difference between those sources that you just jump to, like lighting control and climate and security and weather, okay? So our job next is to make sure that these sources are classified correctly, or activities in this case. And we only have to worry about whatever's checked. Now, there's three classifications. There's video. Video activities, we all know what those are. They're probably going to involve a display or projector or a video type of display, digital signage, okay? Audio type of sources, well, those are going to be the music type of sources, those listen type of activities, right? And other are going to be those activities that you typically just jump to for the purpose of just configuring some settings, shades, climate, security, status pages, weather, home pages, right? You're not going to configure anything along the way like video or audio functions, but still it's an activity, but an other type of activity. Now, our job is to go through this list and make sure these classifications are correct so that System Manager knows what these are. That way it can tell us if audio or video is on in a room so it knows it's going to track what's been sent. Okay? Now, again, System Manager is going to guess at what these are, and most of the time it'll get it right, but you still have to go through this and make sure that these activities have been properly configured. Let's start with weather again, because it's the first in the list. Is weather audio, video, or other? Well, in this case, it doesn't need to be turned on of display. There's no audio devices that need to be turned on, so it must be other. Other activities are typically those you just jump to. What about cable? Well, that's a video activity. And it looks like System Manager got that correct. That is indeed a video activity. Okay? Same thing with Roku. Video. What about the kaleidoscope? It looks like System Manager classified that as other. That doesn't look correct to me because I do need to turn on a TV and even an AVR along the way. So I'm going to click the ellipsis next to the source type here, and I'm going to classify this as the correct source type, which is video, and click OK. What about Blu-ray? Well, that's part of our matrix switch. It's required, a display is required, so it's video, correct. Our 3 Sonos players, make sure they're audio. Those are just going to involve audio distribution in our situation. It could be a speaker or anything like that, okay? Now, what about climate control and security? These don't require any configuration along the way. Typically, they're just going to jump to a climate page and security page. So other is the proper designation. What about home, the home page? Well, if you're just jumping to a home page, you're not going to configure anything along the way, so that would be classified as an other source type. What about our system status screen? Do we want to turn on a TV or audio distribution zone or anything else related to that? No, we just want to jump to the system status page, view what's going on in the home, and then get back to what we were really doing, whether that's, walking away from the panel or getting back to our last audio or video activity that we were watching. Okay? So other is correct. Okay? So we don't have to worry about anything else. So let's move on. Now, the next 2 columns, room and source, those are informational only. They're going to tell you where that source was placed in our workspace. Okay? And there's 2 logical places. Since we're in the media room and we're programming media room activities, these sources were either placed in global or placed in the media room. Now, why would a source be placed in global? Well, that means it's automatically available in other rooms. In this case, our weather needs to be available on our controller, whether we select the family room, office, main bedroom, and so on, or media room, okay? Same thing with cable, Roku, and kaleidoscope, and Blu-ray. All 4 of these are connected to a matrix switch, and that matrix switch is distributing video throughout our home, throughout the different rooms in our home. And in this case, the Blu-ray, the kaleidoscope, the Roku, and cable need to be shared whether we select the family room, office, main bedroom, or the media room, okay? Same thing with our Sonos. They're just a different type of activity, but they're still being distributed throughout more than one room. So the bottom line is that if a source is in global, that implies it's shared, okay? Now let's move on to the last column, activity name. Now the next 2 things I'm going to show you only apply to when you're using list menu controllers, in this case in the media room. Now, what if you're using all button menus? Do you have to perform these functions? Absolutely. I highly recommend doing it. Here's why. First of all, your activities are going to show up more logical, okay? Second of all, if you add a list menu controller later on, next week, next month, or next year, you don't have to come back to this and configure it. It's already done. It's only going to take you a couple of minutes, and I'm going to show you what's next. The first thing we want to do, and it doesn't matter what order you go in, is control how these show up in the list menu, at least the checked items. What order should these show up in, right? Is weather really what we want to appear first? Now, the way I usually do this, and again, this is open to how your client wants things ordered or how you want to order them for your client. Typically, what I do is I like to have home pages first, homepage jumps first, followed by video activities in the order in which the client uses them, followed by audio activities in the order in which the client uses them, followed by other type of activities, except home pages, in the order in which the client uses them. So I'm going to use this move up and move down to move my weather all the way down as the last activity. Once it reaches the bottom of the check, it can't go anymore. And I'm going to move my home page, I only have one because I only have global controllers, up to the top. And for my cable, Roku, Kaleidoscope, Blu-ray, those look fine. That order is fine with me. However, if I want to move my Kaleidoscope up one, well, no problem. So you can control the order pretty easily. But I like that order. And of course, Sonos 1, 2, and 3 makes the most sense. What about my other source types? Climate, security, system status, and weather. Well, I'm going to pop my system status up a little bit above, just below the last Sonos and above climate and security, since the client's going to commonly use that. However, again, this is up to you completely. You can order these how you want, just make it systematic for your clients, okay? Now, another thing we can do, and it only applies to list menus, but I highly recommend doing this, is to rename these activities to something a little bit more systematic and logical and user-friendly for your clients. And what that means is, instead of cable, let's name this watch cable. Instead of just Roku, let's make this a little bit more of an action-based activity. Watch Roku. I can name my Kaleidoscope Watch Movies. I could name my Blu-ray player Watch Discs. Make it really easy for the client to understand. Maybe the client doesn't know what a Sonos player is. Maybe the Sonos Player 1 is dedicated to Jim's music. So maybe you want to call this Listen to Jim's Music or Listen to Music 1. Whatever the client understands these to be. I'm going to call these Listen to Music 2, Listen to Music 3. System status, well, that's good to name in the workspace, okay? But I don't want to call the activity that in that menu the client sees. I want this to know this is informational. So I'm going to call this system information or system info. Now, the way the client knows he's going to a page that's going to provide some information. That's up to you. Climate, security, weather, oh, that's fine. Maybe I'll call weather forecast or whatever. That's up to you. And that's how you program and configure your system manager. Now you've just made system manager way more, or the software way more intelligent. That nervous system knows what's an activity, what's not an activity. What type of activities are these? Are they other, video, or audio? It knows what to name these in list menus and how to order these, at least the checked ones. The rest we don't care about, okay? What if the client decides later, oh, I need a home page because you added a local controller to the media room? Well, you could check that and then move it in the order and configure it, okay? Or anything else. Now, after you configure your activities, the next step is to program them. One of the great advantages of System Manager is that those activities are in a central location. And whether I'm using something in the form of list menus, when I hit that room or list, it knows what to do. But with button menus, these need to be told where to run that activity. We're going to get to that next, but what does it do when you select Watch Cable? What does it do when you select Watch Kaleidoscope? What does it do when you select Listen to Music 3, right? Or better yet, what does it do when you select the power room off or turn off all rooms? So we're going to take care of that next in System Manager, at least for the media room, okay? So again, click the media room, activities, and now we're going to pull our macro window up as far as we can. We could even do it right under the last activity. Doesn't matter. Okay. And we're going to start from the first video activity. Why am I starting from the first video and not home? Well, home has already been programmed for us, but I'll circle back to it to show you what I mean. Okay. Now, before we get going, in the tag editor, or I like to call that the macro and feedback window, you're going to see events. And you're going to see two buckets. You'll see a little lightning bolt next to selection events and deselection events. And underneath each selection and deselection, you're going to see different activities. And these are going to be completely unknown to you right now. Activity start, room on, video on, power on, activity selected, activity ready. Before I go into what these are and how they work, let's talk about what has to happen with our watch cable activity. Okay? What's the first thing in a system has to do? Well, the first thing it needs to do when you hit that watch cable is it needs to, if you have one, jump to a please wait page. And I recommend using that in rooms like this media room that have a projector. Since the projector is going to take a little bit of time to warm up, I need to tell my client, don't press anything. I'm doing some functions here. Just relax. In a few seconds, everything's going to be configured for your cable activity. Okay? So we have to jump to a please wait page. Then what do we have to do? Well, then we have to turn on some things. We have to turn on a projector in our media room. We have to turn on our AVR. Okay? Sometimes you even have to turn on the matrix switch receiver or decoder. Okay? Sometimes you even have to send a delay out between those commands. If the projector takes, 20 or 30 seconds to warm up, whatever that is, you're going to want to wait a little bit and send that delay so that it doesn't switch inputs while that projector is warming up. And then you want to switch inputs, the matrix switch, the receiver, even the TV, even if they're fixed inputs, right? And then, of course, you want to finally jump to your cable activity and give the client what he intended in the first place. So these things all have to happen, right? But why do we have different buckets? Well, RTI created a different way of programming macros. We've created selection events. Let's focus only on the selection events. And you'll see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different selection events that are going to run in order, in this case, when you select watch cable. And each one has a different job. Maybe one is responsible for going to that please wait page we talked about. Maybe one of them is responsible for turning on the projector, okay? And so on and so forth. They all have different functions. Why did we separate these functions? Well, we did it for a few advantages, and I'm going to explain those advantages next. First of all, not all of us some of us might be new to the world of AV, and we might not understand what exactly is involved to get that cable activity done, or what order it needs to be in, right? Do I turn on this first or that first? Do I need, do I switch inputs first? Or when do I do? Sometimes I see some new people that are putting the cart before the horse. So we have to, by using specific selection events for specific jobs, we keep you honest and we keep you from doing things in the wrong way. Another advantage of these types of activities is that list menus are possible. With the list menus, once you program these, they know what to do. They know how to turn on things, how to turn off things, and so on and so forth. Okay? One of the other great advantages of these buckets is that only the instructions that need to run are going to run. Otherwise, they're skipped. For example, and I'm skipping ahead, video on. which is going to be responsible for turning on the video display in your room, in the media room, well, that doesn't need to run every single time you select a video activity. For example, what if I select watch cable and it turns on my projector, in this case, using the video on step, right? Or selection event, as we call it. Why should that have to run again if I now decide to watch Roku? The projector's already on, and System Manager will track what's been sent already and only send the instructions that need to run. Otherwise, it's going to completely skip it. That's a tremendous advantage because that projector might carry a 30-second delay, and why should the client wait 30 seconds if the projector is already on? Now, another great advantage of these selection events is that many times some of these are going to be shared across different activities. For example, whether you select watch cable, watch Roku, watch movies, or watch discs, a lot of these are going to do the same thing over and over again. They're going to turn on the projector, wait a few seconds, turn on the receiver, wait a few seconds. But why should you have to program that for all of these video activities? So these are going to allow, some of these selection events are going to carry through avoiding that repetitious programming. So those advantages are going to make it a lot easier to program and a lot more powerful in terms of tracking and knowing what to send, knowing what not to send, okay? Don't power toggle this device on if it's already on, because it's going to turn it off on somebody else, and so on and so forth. And these selection events are really going to shine when you're sharing sources. But, of course, they're shining naturally because you're centralizing all your programming. Okay, let's get to programming. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is start with the first selection event, activity start. Now, you might notice that sometimes some of these already have a step in there, okay? This step, show list menus, hide all, is designed specifically for our Elegance template, and we've already included that. Why? What does this do? Well, what this will do is that when you select watch cable, the first thing it's going to do while it jumps to the please wait page is going to hide all the menus, all the overlay menus. It's going to make sure there's no source menu popped up on your please wait page. That wouldn't look too intuitive. The only problem here is that we can't really understand what this is actually used for, activity start. We see a command in there and that's great. But activity start is designed to do something completely different. For the purpose of this, I'm going to just delete this just to show you, jump out and jump in again. Every one of these, unless there's programming in there, is going to have a little yellow sticky on the bottom. And once you start programming it, it's going to go away. And pretty soon you'll understand exactly what these do and not use these. But these are kind of like cheat notes that are going to tell you exactly what to program on this particular activity, okay? We already saw that it was used to ensure that that menu is not going to be showing up when we jump to a please wait page. And if you don't know what I mean, I'm talking about this pop-up. So when you jump to your please wait page, it's going to make sure that while you're on that please wait page, you don't have a pop-up showing up here because that will look ridiculous. Okay? Let me get back to that. Okay? So, what does activity start do for them? What are these yellow stickies used for? It's going to tell you three different things. It's going to tell you when this activity runs, because some of these are not going to run all the time or run under certain conditions, right? So what condition is this going to run in? It says this macros run when any activity is selected before any changes are made, meaning before anything else is run. It's also going to tell you, another thing they're going to tell you is what it's used for. And this is going to tell you this is used to send the controller to a please wait page. Okay? So this is where we would program a please wait page. And the third thing it's going to tell you is how often you need to program this from activity to activity, or from video activity to video activity, or from audio activity to audio activity in this room. It says this macro is common to all activities in the room. And what that means is if you program it once for the cable, you don't have to now program it for Roku, program it for the Watch Kaleidoscope, program it for Watch Discs, program it for Listen to Music. It's already built in. Okay? So let's do what it's told. It wants to have a please wait page. If you don't have one, you could skip this. But since our projector takes a while to warm up, a please wait page makes sense. And I've already added a please wait page to the system, so let's take advantage of it. I'm going to click on macro steps. Make sure your macro steps is exposed, okay? And you're going to click on or double click page link. I'm going to double click that. And it's going to bring in a page link command. And for device, I'm going to select from the list my global, because that's where it's located, please wait page. There we go. Now, what does calling controller mean? Calling controller means, since these are centralized macros, potentially 5 different controllers can be running this watch cable macro, or 20 different controllers, depending on how big your system is. Calling controller means whatever controller is running this activity, jump to your own please wait page. Okay? So there you go. So let's populate. I'm going to populate back that option. You don't have to do that. Show list menus, and I'm just going to populate the one that was in there. Hide all overlay menus. I'm just going to do hide all overlay menus. That's fine. Okay. All right. What about room on, which is the next one? And again, you got the yellow sticky. Always follow the yellow sticky to the letter. If it doesn't match what's going on in your system, I'll skip it. When is this going to run room on? Well, it tells you. This macro's run when an audio or video source is selected and the room is currently off. So it's only going to run when the room is off, and it's going to run whether you select audio, listen to music, or video in this case. Watch any of our video sources. So because it's going to run regardless of whether you're selecting audio or video, this is used, and it even tells you, to turn on any equipment that's used for both audio and video tasks. So if you have a device that has to turn on in this room, right, that is used for both audio and video, this is where you're going to turn it on, okay? Now, do I have a device? It even gives you an example, like an AV receiver. And it tells you it's common to all activities in the room. So it'll run for all your audio and video activities. You don't have to program it from activity to activity, okay? Now, do I have a device in this room that has to turn on regardless of whether I select any of the video activities and audio activities? Well, since I don't have to turn on my receiver when I select the audio activities, I'm going to skip this. But if my audio activities were connected to my receiver, which they're not, they're connected to an AD46-100, then I would need to turn on my receiver regardless of whether I had video or audio selected. For example, if you had a Sonos amp connect or a Sonos port connected to your receiver, well, the receiver would have to turn on for that audio activity, okay? But in our case, our audio and video are completely separated. So I'm going to skip this and move on to video. And it says, this macro's run only when a video source is selected and the room is not currently on a video source. Well, what could a room possibly be doing if it's not on a video source? Well, it could be off, or it could be listening to audio, okay? And this is where you turn on video-specific equipment like a display or projector. But anything you need for both audio, for video only, okay? Do we have anything that's needed for video only? And it's common to all video activities in the room. Program it for the cable, You don't got to program it again for the Roku movies and discs. Okay? Doesn't apply to audio. Okay? Do we have any devices that need to turn on for video only? Yes, we have two. First, we have a projector. So let's turn that on. Bring in a command. Select our projector from the dropdown. And under function, let's select the power on function. What else has to turn on for video only? Well, our receiver, our AVR. We have an AVR in the room. And since the AVR didn't have to turn on for audio also, we skip the room on and we only turn it on when we turn on video. So we're going to bring in another command and we're going to select our receiver, our AVR, and for our function, power, and for our argument, well, let's turn that on. Okay? If you need a little bit of a delay in between these commands, which I recommend, you could bring in a time delay. Just double click it, bring it to the right position, and then just change it. I'm going to make it 0.3 of a second. Just give it a little bit of a breather room. Now, since the projector and even maybe the AVR needs to warm up, I'm going to program a delay that'll handle both of these. Now, the projector is going to take at least 30 seconds to warm, or 20 seconds to warm up. And since that's good enough for both the AVR and projector, I'm going to bring in a time delay, and I'm going to change this to 20 seconds. So it's not going to move on until 20 seconds have passed. So the projector is going to turn on. It's going to wait 0.3 of a second, which is basically like blinking your eyes, and it's going to run the power on and wait now. It's going to wait, and it's going to stay on that please wait page for 20 seconds before moving on to the next function. Okay? Power on source. Now, power on source is a little different. This is going to turn on the source device for the cable box. But wait a minute. The cable box is shared between the media room, family room, office, and main bedroom. So which room gets to turn it on first? Well, it says here, this macros run when the first room in the system begins using this source. And since this source is shared, only the first room will turn it on. So if someone wants to watch it in the media room and runs their watch cable activity, well, it's going to turn on our cable box with this power on source that we haven't programmed yet. But now, while it's on, if someone also wants to watch it in the office, it's going to skip right over this because it's already on. Only the first room can turn it on. So let's program the command that turns on our cable box. Bring in a command. And then from the drop-down, I'm going to select my cable box, my global or shared cable box. And then under function, this must be an IR device because it's just an alphabetical list of functions versus categories. I'm going to select my power on command. But wait a minute. It doesn't look like I have a power on command. I only have a power toggle. What is going to happen? Well, because the system is intelligent and it knows when this cable command has been sent once, it will not try to send it again if the same room or other rooms select this activity. So even a power toggle is going to work well, thanks to the internal power tracking built into System Manager. Okay? So even though it's a toggle, it knows when or when not to send this. Now, activity selected. This macro's run to configure the equipment in the room to use the source. Before this is run, everything's been turned on. Room devices, the video devices, and the source device. Use this to configure the AV signal routing on anything that has an input. So the rule of thumb here is if it has an input, this is where it switches. Now I have 3 things that need to switch in this room. Bring in a command. The first thing I want to switch is my receiver. AVR, And for my function, I'm going to select the input that my matrix switch in decoder is connected to, HDMI 1. But I also want to switch my decoder. So I'm going to bring in a command, select my AVPro matrix. We're using the ACMX44HD base T. And I'm going to select my switch output function. What source? My cable. What output? The media room. Looks like it was set on that to begin with. Now I also want to switch my projector input. And even though the receiver and the projector are always going to be on the same input for all these video activities, I still want to make sure that the inputs stay consistent. So if the client decides to use the factory remote and botches something up or presses the wrong button on a device using the factory remote or even the device itself, that this will keep the system in sync with the input. And if you want to put a little time delay in between these, maybe 0.3 of a second, it's not, as long as it doesn't impact the client experience, this will run in succession without providing any kind of sizable delay. Okay, so we switch the inputs with activity select. Let's move on to activity ready, which looks like another one that's programmed for us. Fortunately, this is always going to be programmed for us. It's going to, number one, jump to the page we need, jump to the cable page, and two, it's going to make sure that any menus that are on our controllers are hidden, which is wonderful. We don't want to have a menu in the way that pops up on our screen in front of our cable controls, right? And there we go. That's always going to be programmed for you, which is why we don't have to program other source types. But I'll get back to that. So let's recap. We press watch cable on a list menu or button menu. The first thing it does is jump to a please wait page and make sure that there's no overlays or pop-ups displayed while it jumps to that please wait page and displays it. The next thing it's going to do, if there is a command in here, is turn on any devices that are needed for audio and video. They have to be needed for both. It's only going to run when the room is off, and it's needed for both a device that shares audio and video tasks, commonly receivers, but since our receiver is only used for video, we skip this function. Video on is going to run devices responsible for video only, and this is going to run whether you're listening to audio or the room is off. It's going to turn on our projector and turn on our receiver, okay? And do a little bit of a time delay. And since this is only going to run when video is off, we don't have to wait 20 seconds every time we select a video task if the video is already on, thanks to the intelligent tracking in System Manager. What about power on source? Well, this is going to turn on the cable box, but only if the media room is the first room doing it. If your wife or significant other turned it on in the other room, well, that's going to skip right over this. Normally, though, it'll power toggle, which will turn it on. Don't worry about pressing this again. It'll skip right over it because it's already on. Then it will switch inputs on whatever devices need inputs. In our case, the AVR, our AVPro matrix, all right, AVPro matrix, and our, of course, fantastic. And then, of course, it will finally jump to our cable page 20 seconds later, the first time the client runs this. What if the client now is watching Roku and he hits watch cable? Well, to go to the please wait page real quick, skip over this. It's going to skip over this because this is already on. It's going to only run this if the cable box is off. It's only going to switch inputs if it's not on the current activity, which it's not, and it's going to finally jump to this. So very quickly. Let's turn our attention to deselection events. Deselection events are the events that are going to run when the client turns off the room. So as selection events are meant to set up an activity, deselection events are used to do the opposite, to turn things off, to get the system ready for next time. Where do deselection events originate? If I click on either panel, doesn't matter which one, when the client selects the power button, that'll pop up the power options, and the client can either turn off the current room that they're using, that will run the deselection events in the room, or he could turn all rooms off, which will run all the deselection events in all the rooms. So, getting back to our media room, let's program the deselection events for the cable box. The first thing that will run is room off start. And this macro is run at the beginning whenever the room off command is run. So as soon as the client presses that room off, this will start running. And this is used to send the controller to a please wait page. So if you have a please wait page and you want to use it when the room shuts down, this is where you program it. And of course, it's common to all activities in the room, meaning you only have to program it once per room. So let's bring in our page link, double click it, and just select our please wait page for the calling controller. Now let's move on to activity deselected. Now Integration Designer wants to be useful and powerful in terms of running these activities. And this is one of those I'm here if you need me type of activities. And this is going to run under two scenarios, not just when the room turns off, but when another source is selected. So whether the client's watching cable and selects another source or just turns off the room, activity deselected is going to run. And this is run when another source is selected or the room is turned off, and it says you'll rarely need to do anything for this step. But if you could think of anything that you would want to run when you select another source or just before you turn off the room, this is where you can do it. Sometimes I like to go over to my cable activity and just check out a sports score in the middle of a movie, and I forget to pause the movie player. So on my movie player deselection event, I pause it so that if I just go over to the other activity, it automatically pauses my movie so I don't lose my place. So that's an example of what you would use activity deselected for, but it's really meant to run anything before you either turn off the system or select another activity. Some people like to pause disc players before they turn it off, so the disc isn't turned off while it's in the middle of playing. That's perfectly reasonable. But I'm going to skip this and move on to power off source. Now, it says this macros run after no rooms are using this source. Since this cable box can potentially be used in all four rooms at the same time, you want to make sure that only the last room can turn off this cable box. So only the last room can turn it off. So in my home, if my wife and I are watching cable in the family room, well, when I go to bed, maybe I want to pick up where the movie or the show is on, and while my wife is still watching it in the other room. I don't want to run my activity and turn it off on her by running the power on source, so this won't run since it's already on. But more importantly, if one of us turns off the cable box while the other is watching it, we don't want to turn it off. So only the last room can turn off a shared source. So let's bring in our power toggle. Instead of reprogramming this, I'm going to select my power on source, and I'm going to click just to the left of it. Now you can see my cursor blinking, and in the toolbar here, I'm going to select the copy function. If you're not sure what these do, just hover over them. And now I'm going to select power off source and select paste. That way I don't have to reprogram it. And now that power toggle is correct. Let's move on to video off. Now video off is going to typically do the opposite of video on, which in this case turns on our projector, and turns on our AVR. Now typically this is where we would program our video off, but be careful with this one because this one is going to run under two scenarios. Not only when you turn off your room, but also when you select an audio source. You may not want to turn off your TV when an audio source is selected. So it says there's a provision for that. It says this macro is run when a video source is no longer in use, either because you selected an audio source or because the room was turned off. Use this to turn off power to any equipment that was used in the video on. But if you don't want the video display to turn off when switching to an audio source, then leave that for the room off macro, which only turns off when you turn off the room. So my video off is basically getting my video activities ready by turning off my projector and turning on my projector and turning on my AVR. But if I want to leave these intact, I don't want to program those on the video off if I don't want them to turn off when I'm select a music activity. Because I like to watch sports while my music is playing on my audio distribution system. So I'm going to leave that empty and program it on the room off, which is only going to run when the room off request is made, whether you're watching video or selecting audio. Okay? So I'm going to copy my video on. How do you copy the entire macro? Let's click to the left of the first step, but instead of clicking copy, which is only going to copy the selected line, I'm going to hold down my shift key when I select copy. And you can see that description says press shift to copy the entire macro to the clipboard. So I'm going to hold down the shift, press copy, and I'm going to go to my room off and press paste. And now I'm going to change these arguments. For my projector, I'm going to turn it off. For my AVR, well, I'm going to turn that off as well. Sometimes projectors require a double press. So I'm going to make a copy of that power off command by holding down the control key and dragging down where it says command. And now I made an exact copy. And so I'll put a little bit of a delay in between there. So it'll turn off my projector, the confirmation page will pop up, and it will turn it off again. And then turn off my AVR as well. We don't need the delay, so I'll right-click and delete that step. And now the video off won't run when I select audio, and room off will just turn off the room when I'm ready to turn it off. Okay? Now, room off complete is also programmed for us. You really don't have to program this because it's designed to return the controller first and foremost to the home pages, so it's ready the next time the client picks it up or walks over to the wall. And it will make sure that any list or overlay that's showing up will show the source list, so it's ready for next time. Client could just walk up to the remote, it's on the home page, and he could select a source from the pop-up. Now, you could change this around. If you don't want your sources to pop up, you could change this. Or if you wanted to jump to a different page other than the home page, maybe you created a welcome page, well, you can navigate to your welcome page and change these to their final destination. But this will control the way the controller resets to the default view for the next session. And it's already programmed for us. Fantastic. So let's summarize the deselection events. It goes to a please wait page. Deselection will run whenever another source is selected or when the system is turned off. If you have a use for this, it's great. It says you'll rarely need to do anything, so I'll skip over it. Power off source will turn off the source, but only when the last room turns off that source or selects that turn off source, turn off power command. Video off turns off video specific devices, but be careful because these are going to run when you select an audio source. And if you want to keep your video intact when you select an audio source, put it all in the room off. And that's where I turn off my projector and my AVR. And now room off complete will return the controller to its default view. And those are the deselection events and selection events. Now, if I go to my next activity, which happens to be Roku, activity start is done for us. Room on, we decided we don't need because there's no common devices that share audio and video tasks. Video on is going to take care of our video functions, and that will automatically inherit from our watch cable. Power on source, well, that's meant to turn on our source, and since Roku probably will be stuck at some screensaver, we don't even need to turn it on. Activity selected will switch inputs. Now, it's a good idea to program this again, and since there's a lot of commands here, what I like to do is select the cable activity, select the activity selected we programmed earlier, click just to the left and hold down the Shift key while I copy this whole series of commands. Then go back to our Roku, select activity selected, and then paste those in. And then just make the changes we need. The AVR is fine on HDMI 1. The matrix, though, has to route to Roku. And the projector is stuck on HDMI 1. Fantastic. Activity ready, we'll jump to our Roku page and hide any overlays. No need to program anything. What about our deselection events? Room off start? Well, that's fine the way it is. Activity deselected? Well, we could pause the Roku if we decide to jump to another source. That's an option, but I usually use that for definitive movie players because I might be watching TV on my Roku also. So I'll skip that as well. Power off source. Now, Roku doesn't necessarily have to power off, but sometimes clients forget to pause it when they turn off the system and wind up leaving it streaming, all night while the system is off. So to safeguard that, on the power off source, I could bring in a command. Sorry about that. Select the Roku and select the remote keys and select the home function from the commands. That'll return the Roku to its homepage as a power off command almost, as a workaround, so to speak. So if the client forgets to, and we don't want to pause the Roku because it's not really going to make it ready for next time. The next time the client starts the Roku, it'll be back on its homepage where it belongs. Now, video off, we don't need to program because we don't want Roku, when we select audio, to turn off our Roku session. And room off will run whenever we turn off the room, whether we're coming from audio or video. And that'll make sure our projector is off. Looks like a command is missing here. Let me bring that up here and turn off everything. Okay? All right. Let's just get rid of this. Put this there. And there we go. All right. Now, room off complete, again, that's done for us. It jumps back to the home pages, whether it's a multi-room controller or a local controller. That's why there's 2 page jumps in here, because a multi-room controller might be controlling the media room, and that way it jumps to its own home page, or a local controller in the media room has its own home page. That's why there's 2 home pages. And then it'll make sure that our sources are shown for next time. That way, we're ready to pick up that remote and select a source without having to select a source select button. Fantastic. You could do a lot of things with this if you don't like this, but normally I just leave it as is. Okay? Now, I'm going to skip over the kaleidoscope because you kind of get the idea, and I'm going to move right down to an audio activity. We haven't really programmed an audio activity, and this is slightly different because audio activities don't have a video on and video off. In its place, they have an audio on and an audio off. Now, some of these will inherit. For example, activity start. There's our please wait page in our show list menu. Hide, whatever. Okay. Room on, we don't need because we decided there's no device that's needed for both audio and video. And since room on's going to run only when the system's off, regardless of whether you select video or audio, we don't want to program anything in there for any of those. Okay. Now, what about audio on? Now, it says here, this is run when an audio source is selected and the room is not currently on an audio source. Okay. And it says turn on audio specific equipment. Now, typically I use this to turn zones on on an amplifier, or if my device requires the turn on amplifier, maybe I'll program a 12-volt trigger here or an on command to turn on the amp responsible. But since our audio distribution device from RTI or our DSP or our AD46100 doesn't require a zone on command. It's ready for action. All I have to do is switch the source from off to an input, and now it's ready for action. So I don't need to turn anything on specific to audio. I don't recommend turning on the amp here because the amp takes time to warm up. We talk about more of that in audio distribution training. Okay, so let's skip this and move on to power on source. Now, Sonos players don't have a power on and power off. Like most music streamers, they're either paused, stopped, or playing. There's no on and off state. So we could skip that and move over to activity selected. Now, we do need to switch an input. The only input we need to switch is on our audio distribution device. So I'm going to go to my command here, and I'm going to switch the input on our AD46100 media room zone to the Sonos Player 1. Select our DSP, select our zone group context commands, source selection, and then just make sure the right source and the right room are selected. It'll always default to the current room and the first source. No need to turn it on, the zone. The zone can either be on an input or off. Okay? Fantastic. Now let's go to activity ready. That will jump to our Sonos. So that was pretty simple. Not a lot of configuration there. What about the deselection events for our Listen to Music 1? Room off start? Well, that's inherited from our video activities. Deselected? Oh, maybe you want to pause your Sonos when you switch to another source. I don't recommend that because if you just want to continue listening to music, it'll get interrupted. So don't recommend that. Power off source. Now, Sonos doesn't have a power off, but to prevent it from streaming all night, just like the Roku, when you turn off your system, you might want to go bring in a command here, select your Sonos driver from the dropdown, and then you want to pause that Sonos. Just make sure it's paused. Make sure you pick the right Sonos. Okay, that's an option there. All right, audio off. Now, audio off turns off audio specific, like a video. This runs when an audio source is no longer in use, either because a video source was selected or because the room was turned off. And this is where we're going to turn off our audio distribution amp zone. Okay, so I'm going to go to my commands. I'm going to go and select the same exact command I used for my input, except instead of switching an input, I'm going to select the off command, which lives in the input selection. And that'll turn off my zone in the media room. Room off, well, that'll make sure my projector and receiver's off always when I turn off my room. And room off complete will be done for you. So pretty simple. Okay, and then we would do the same thing with music 2 and 3. Now, what about other source types, like the climate control? Notice that when you flag a source type other, the selection events and deselection events are very limited. You do have an activity selected that's used to switch inputs. So you could actually switch inputs when you go to another source type. So if you have a reason to do that, very rare, then you could technically add that. But really all you want to do is jump to that source. Fortunately, Activity Ready is always programmed for us. And so you never have to program an other source type. Once you add a device to the workspace and you enable it as an activity and set it to other, okay, it's already designed to jump. You don't even have to look at it. Okay, so there you go. And on the off side, since these don't have power and all that stuff, activity deselected will run when you come off that source or turn off the room. So if you have to turn anything off, this is where you do it. Or if you have to run anything when you switch to another activity, here's where you do it. So, moral of the story is, For other source types, you never have to program them. Whether it's a homepage jump, that's going to take care of our global controller. Okay? If it's an other like climate control, that's going to take care of your business. Pretty simple. So we demonstrated how you can utilize list menus, which is the easy button. We showed you the intelligent menu navigation within our templates, and I'll show you what that looks like for real. Let's launch one of our menus here. I'll do the list menu. Let's select this, select the media room, select the kaleidoscope, and then here we are. And now I can control this. Everything is good. If I go and decide to switch to another source, like my Blu-ray player, well, that's fine. It'll skip over all the things that are already on. Okay? Now, if I go back to my cable box, it's not going to try to turn it on again because it's already on. And then when I'm finally ready to turn off the system, click the power button, turn off the room, and now my room goes back to the home page with the default menu. Okay? We've talked about centralized programming. Now our rooms are all centralized. The program is centralized in the media room, in the family room. Everything is centralized in the office and so on. If they're shared sources, well, you have a lot less work to do. Okay? We also talked about configuring these activities, which makes System Manager a lot more intelligent. We've enabled what needs to be enabled. We've classified the source as a video source, audio source, or other. We've renamed the source to a more user-friendly name for the client to see in his list menu. Okay? And we've also told the system how to order these in list menus. Now, what about button menus? Let's close by figuring out how to tell a button menu. List menus already know how to run the activity. No work required. But with a button menu, how do you tell it how to run the source selection and even the room selection? Well, with the room selection, you're going to tell the system what room was selected. So I'm going to go to the tag browser, and under room selection tags, I'm going to drag these over to the correct room. Media room goes to the media room. That'll turn green since it's already used. The family room, that's going to go to the family room button. And now that turns green. The office, main bedroom. Now these are all tagged and programmed automatically now with a command to select the room, tell the software what room is selected, and reverse state that button when that room is selected so you can always know in the list what room is selected and not selected. And then when you select one of these, it'll pop up the source menu. How do you program these? With the activity tags in the same area. You're just going to drag these over. So what is the tag for the cable? You're going to find that cable in the dropdown. These are all in alphabetical order, how you name them. You could see an M that contains a macro. Drag it over. Drag the kaleidoscope over, and so on. And you get the idea. Roku, the Blu-ray player, and you just drag these over. What is this program? A command that tells the button where to find that centralized programming. What this command is saying is select the activity for whatever the current room is, global cable. So if the media room is selected, that means start running the selection events for the cable box, starting from the top. It's that simple. And that's our lesson on System Manager. Now, we're going to be doing a more advanced System Manager course, so stay tuned for that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.